Professor Smith, a number of people feel that the cello is probably the most comfortable instrument to play of the string family. Why do people think this way, and how do you feel about it?
I think people think this way because a person is seated when they are playing. How I feel about it is that I believe that most cellists can be very comfortable playing the instrument. However, when the young child starts the instrument, we have to, as teachers, be very careful that we lead them into a manner that will make the instrument comfortable. There are some guidelines that can be very helpful for this. Number one, we have to check the height of the instrument once that instrument has been sized to the child.
How do you do that?
The adjustment of the end pin can help the student to size that instrument to the right place when they are seated. So what we want to do is adjust the end pin to a place that will make the child be having the scroll approximately at the middle of the chin. Then, as your feet move to either side of the chair, we encourage the foot to be slightly ahead at this stage. Then the body sits on the front half of a flat bottom chair.
The chair becomes a very important item then, the kind of chair that they're sitting on.
Absolutely. And with that chair, the flat bottom chair, the better the chair would, the best chair would be slightly forward, slanting down towards the body.
I've seen some cellists using this type of chair actually put two ashtrays on the two rear legs of the chair to give it that little bit of lift that you're speaking about.
That would help. That would help. Now, in order for the child then to move from adjusting this cello to the right height to being seated, the child steps back, or the person steps back, sits on the front part of the chair and brings that cello to them. Now you'll notice this is too high for me. Therefore, I'm going to move this.
Why do you think it was too high?
It is too high because of the placement of the top of the instrument in relation to my chest. It is ending up way up in here, and I want it at the center of the breastbone.
Priscilla, exactly where do you place the end pin?
The end pin, I feel, should be slightly to the right of the center of a person's body. If we take the instrument and place it exactly in the center, it would then be very awkward. If we bring it slightly to the right of the center of the body, it puts the angle very natural for the bow to operate, and also for the balance of the body. And in all string playing, we are very concerned that the body is balanced, and this contributes through the entire body.
I can see where that would prevent bringing the shoulder around that you so often see with cello players.
It does, and it also, by not having to bring it so far around, we have more of the natural weight of the arm into the string, which produces a better sound. One of the most important things, Marvin, for teachers to look for and to help students adjust is that this neck is never on the shoulder. It should have space there, and although the bottom end pin can be in the range of the person's ear, it is generally slightly behind it. So that makes for this comfortableness. One of the things which I have picked up from many different teachers, but there are several who use this a lot, is called the bear hug. And this idea gives this feeling primarily coming from the shoulder and into the instrument, so that as we swing our arms, we get spatialness in approaching the instrument. And the child is taught that there is more to playing this instrument than simply moving this and this. So right from the very beginning, it is good to get this feeling of openness.
Do you stand up when you do that?
Yes, I do, and I get the children. And here again, the feet contribute to this, so that there is sort of a buoyancy in the balls of the feet so that as I move or get the child to move, there is this feeling that I can move up and down, up
Very good.
and down.
That pretty well determines where your feet are then, aren't they?
It does.
When you set on
It
the
does.
chair.
Now, as one plays longer, you're going to adjust these feet. The other thing that contributes an awfully lot to any string playing, and very important to cello playing, is the height of that person. And as teachers, we have to recognize that we are working with different sized bodies. And as we work with different sized bodies, we have to be alert to how that body reacts physically.
Mm-hmm.
Once we have started on getting the instrument into this idea, I then like to get the feeling of this left and the right hand moving. Many of the Suzuki teachers use the idea of the ski jump in getting this opening, and so we set the hand. I generally think the first 3 fingers are adequate.
In between the strings.
Right, in between the top 2 strings. And we go down, and as we get to the bottom, then we move this 3rd finger to pluck that string.
That's right at the end of the fingerboard.
Right at the end of the fingerboard. And it's called a ski jump. And children love it because they feel that they can get a sound out of the instrument.
That sweep, I would think, also would help strengthen the fingers.
It
at least
does.
the 3rd finger in
yes,
this case.
because of pulling. We have to, I think, Marvin, be very careful that we do not let string playing become too isolated away from sound. So we must incorporate sound as we build this feeling of the whole body involvement.
That also gives you a feeling of the entire fingerboard rather than the rigidity of being
Yes.
in one place.
Absolutely. And that can be done, of course, on between any of these strings. This is an exercise that should be carried on for at least several weeks.
Before we go to the left hand, would you just mention what you observe as a common fault on why students produce a poor sound on the cello? Because you hear it so often.
There are 3 contributing factors to poor sound. Of course, there may be more, but these are the most important ones. Number 1 is the lack of understanding of the concept of the bow being at a right angle to the string. This has to do with the angle as we move from string to string. I will play just a few notes on each string so that you understand where I'm coming from on this. If you notice, the arm comes around, and sometimes we have to adjust the instrument just a little, and this is why the feet being mobile help in this motion. The number 2 factor is that there is not the understanding and the development of the hand and this arm having weight into this.
That concept prevents the clenching of the bow and the tightening of the thumb, which causes some
That's right.
extension.
We need this thumb curved at all times.
And not tight.
All times. The next concept that I would think contributes the most is that we do not understand and we do not teach enough of the practice of rate of speed in relation to the energy and the weight.
It seems to me that you're developing the balance between the weight, the bow speed, and the sound point as the placement of the bow in relationship to the bridge, as well as being perpendicular, to bring about that sound. And there must be that balanced relationship because they are interrelated.
Yes. All of those contribute to a good, healthy sound with a lot of energy and vitality. The segment that we will be addressing right now is solely left hand, but should be considered in conjunction with early stages of bowing, and the development is simultaneous rather than separated. When we establish the spacing for the left hand, I often have children to do this. And then they can turn it over and they can see the space between the fingers, and they are able then to put that, transfer it to the instrument. Okay? Now the spacing is very important, but along with the spacing we have to also know where we're going to let this arm move. If the arm is simply brought from the lower part up to the neck of the instrument, we oftentimes will get the sunken wrist, the elbow too low or too high. If one uses a swinging of this arm to give it a little bit of flexibility and energize it, so to speak, we get this motion going. From the front, when I swing the arm, or when I have the student swing the arm here, then I bring it to the middle of the instrument, to the middle of this fingerboard, so that I come from this up to here.
Why do you do that?
Back.
Why do you do that?
Part of the reason is to establish the correct level for the elbow. If you move only the fingers back, the elbow will be in almost the correct spot. If I ask them to move the whole arm back, the elbow then ends much too high.
It also appears to me if they bring it to that midpoint, the line of vision, they can see their hand position much better than being back up this way.
That's a very good point.
Which tends to bring the shoulder around.
Yes. So as I move this back, then I have also, during this time, gotten them aware that this is going to be the spacing. So we come from here, and I get them to space the finger, and then move the hand and the forearm back, but not the elbow.
Very important is that you're bringing all four fingers into position rather than so many of the concepts that uses one finger at a time.
Yes. And of course, that is very poor in establishing a posture for this hand.
Could you explain a little bit more the relationship of your fingers to the string and that posture for which you speak?
The half-step interval, which is established through the use of each of these four fingers, or through this, we are then able to get those fingers spaced. Generally speaking, in the very early stage, the use of a signal dot, a little dot on the fingerboard, can be placed at the placement for the first finger and the fourth finger. I do not advocate second and third finger having signal dots.
Now that's just a dot to be used at a very early stage, but not to be sustained.
Right. I would say, though, that until they become quite familiar with this interval of the minor third.
The sense of spacing. I understand that's also a technique for deciding the size of the instrument as being correct, is the feeling that the hand in a good position does play that minor third between the first and fourth finger.
Yes. In establishing this, then, sometimes you will have this third finger come very close back to this, to the second finger. However, if they have established this, then we can simply get them to be aware that this third finger will gravitate to the second and not stay a half step away.
What about the thumb?
The line is, I'm so glad you asked about the thumb, because it is the crucial factor in establishing a good left hand posture. The thumb basically will be in back of the second finger, but we should always think of the thumb as having mobility. A flexible thumb is the key to good weight into this string. Also, I think one should think of this as going into a sponge rather than into something solid.
I noticed you have the feeling, rather than going to the instrument, of bringing the instrument to you. It seems to me when you put your left hand down, if you bring the thumb in too soon, that it becomes a counter pressure which creates tension, that you bring about the weight almost
Right.
without the thumb and then place the thumb. Is that correct?
That is correct. The thumb must be attended to by a teacher, but we should not stress too much that the thumb is to be placed in back of the second finger. The thumb is in the area of the second finger, but it should not be rigid.
There's so many frames.
Right. And so this kind of shuttle game, which Paul Rowland advocated so much in his materials, is also applicable to cello and bass. The development of the left hand is done primarily through the pizzicata approach. Although I am at the same time developing rhythm patterns and motion with in the use of open
Articulations,
strings, I will be developing pitch and resonance in the left hand. And so therefore, for quite some time, each new aspect that is approached with concentration on right hand and then concentration on left,
And then put them
combining
together.
Yes.
Very good.
So when we start with the left hand, it is advisable to use the fourth finger and move in a descending scale passage. But I often want a child or a student to hear the resonance of the octave below that fourth finger, and then through the pizzicata, and then the hand is set. One very important aspect is to not have the first finger in place, because it will help to give more weight to the front, and it will take away from rigidity in this first finger.
That's very important, because so many of our approaches always starts with the first finger. We move up that way, which produces the problems that you're concerned about,
That's
that
right.
you've just expressed. So the important there then is starting with the fourth finger. You have the advantage of the octave and the relaxation of the first finger to avoid the tension.
Very important. The term that I often use is relax the first finger. I don't talk about lifting the first finger or having it far away. Just relax.
Just relax it.
And
all right.
in doing so, the energy can go into the top.
Very good.
All right.
Now, your use of harmonics after this hand is set.
Very early stage, the harmonics should be introduced. And when I say very early stage, as soon as the bow has been developed to the point that you can draw.
Sound.
The first aspect that I have students approach is the idea of finding the octave. And I have them put the thumb at the base of the neck and simply make a curve or a semicircle. When they can do that and have a nice posture to the hand.
Now, that harmonic I refer to as the second partial, so that we understand this, because the string is divided into two equal parts. That's the octave or the first harmonic, but we will label it as the second partial.
Second partial. After one finds the second partial, I will have them find the third partial on the string lower, which will be the matching.
How do they find that?
At the base of the neck, it is almost above where the thumb is. And
So it's with the first finger, and you don't really move the hand that much.
that's right. Well, there is a slight movement to the hand. Yes, there is.
But the thumb stays in the same place, just rotates.
Absolutely.
All right.
Okay?
Very good.
And for several weeks, a child will be playing this.
Very good. Tell me the purpose of that.
The purpose is to get the feeling of this motion and to relax the fingers more, to move the bow into a position that gets closer to the bridge, because if we are playing up over the fingerboard, we do not get a good sound, as
Very
we
good.
know. So it accomplishes several things.
Now, when you say early, you're talking about in a very early experience, because so many people, you've got a youngster up in position, you're doing harmonics, that's generally considered a rather advanced experience, but you're speaking about the first year of
Oh,
playing
the
the
first
instrument.
year, definitely
Yes.
the first year.
Very important,
In
thank
fact,
you.
I would, I generally introduce it within 2 to 3 months. At least they can do this.
So they get the feeling of the fingerboard.
And it accomplishes this motion that we started out with,
Yes.
so that there is this feeling that the whole
Very good.
fingerboard is going to be developed. The next stage is to get them understanding from first position.
You do that on each string?
I do that on every string.
All right.
The next aspect is for them to take the hand away from the instrument and bring it back.
Very good. All right.
So that all different kinds of approaches can be used to incorporate the total concept. Okay? One of the hardest things, Marvin, in cello teaching is the teaching of the extension. As we know, when we were working back in first position, this is referred to as a closed hand position. In other words, half step between each, or the minor third. The major third is referred to from 1 to 4. When we establish this kind of a pattern, we have a major third between the first finger
That's
and
the
the fourth.
concept of the extension.
And that is the extension.
All right.
It can be referred to as an extended position, or it can be referred to as the extension. So the terms are used interchangeably. An approach to teaching the use of the extension has always caused a lot of problems for most cello teachers. The one that I have found to be very successful in my teaching, I'd like to share, and this is through the use of the harmonics.
It's the most unusual approach, all right?
There are 2 reasons for doing it. One is that the finger is lightly touched, which gets rid of rigidity in the left hand. The second one is that I'm going to teach it in the third position, which accounts for the spacing of the fingers not so far apart. As we move up the fingerboard, the fingers get closer together. So this is the approach that I use. In developing this extension for the left hand, the use of the harmonics, we match the second partial, or the octave on the A string, with the third partial, which is our first finger on the D string.
Same pitch.
Then there is a substitution from the first finger with putting the third finger on that same partial. And the development then goes between 3 and 1.
Going to the fourth partial, all right?
That's right. Then once this third and this first has been established within the feel of the hand, I then have the third finger substituted with the second. So the second finger now is playing the same note that the third. I now can reach the fourth finger a whole step above, which now comes to the next partial,
Which is the fifth.
fifth partial.
And then you go to the first
Now I go
finger.
back to the first finger and I sort of roll the hand.
So then you go to the fourth partial, and that way they're playing the extension with the pitches that they've learned before with 1 and 3. You're simply having them do 2 and 1, but you're adding the fourth finger for the fifth partial, which gives the whole hand
Right.
on the harmonics.
What we are eventually wanting, you see, in an extension is a whole step between 1 to 2 and 2 to 4.
4.
So there should be equidistance between 1, 2 and 2, 4. And in that manner then, they are able to
with the
play
harmonic.
the taps.
You have to go over a string. Now you can do that same thing, finding that same harmonic up here, can't you? But there you use the thumb.
That brings up the point of the thumb and the use of the thumb on the cello. The thumb serves almost as another string, or another finger, I should say. So therefore, the thumb can be approached in the early stages through the use of the thumb usage in playing harmonics. And so or it can be very early on just moving back and forth.
Let's hear the sound of that.
Okay.
It's just a thumb. Excuse me, that would help shifting.
Yes, and then we start finding harmonics, specific harmonics. And that definitely should be done by the second year, into the second year.
Very good.
It opens up the entire fingerboard for the child, and they recognize that when they get into more advanced playing, the thumb is not a sense of a usage that scares them.
And it's got a custom to doing it. Now, would you show them that same tune?
All right. There we find the thumb on the first note.
Which is third partial.
Right.
Same as the other. Thumb, 1, 2, thumb, 1, 2, thumb, 1, 2. 1, 2, 3, 2, 1, thumb, thumb, 1. Actually, it's easier to play it there than it was in third position because your fingers move with the pitch.
That's right.
All right.
This
Very
is
good.
sometimes very confusing from pitch standpoint, and therefore you almost have to teach it with only the fingers and sort of let the child understand that that is different. As soon as we have finished with this idea of getting the extension developed through the harmonics, then we want to establish them, the fingers solid on the string. Anytime that you are doing a descending passage and using an extension, you will start with maybe fourth finger.
2, 1.
And that is called a backward extension. If my music calls for the first finger being used, I am in a closed position and I move the thumb forward and the second and the third fingers, and then I am in a movement which is referred to as the forward extension.
You can practice that both ways with the harmonics, forward and backward.
Absolutely.
And then do it solidly right afterwards.
Do it solid.
Then where do you go?
Now I move to the back and I have the child
octave.
find the octave, and I move then into a descending pattern, which is incorporating the backward extension. And so on.
All right.
The one thing that a person must be aware of when they are teaching this is that the thumb absolutely must move. Whenever the hand moves, that thumb must move. More problems are caused, I think, in the use of the extension through a rigid and a thumb that remains in place than any other one thing.
Very good.
So the fingers must have mobility, and the thumb must have agility.
To help bring that about, you use a tune that uses substitute fingerings, as I recall.
Yes, this is a tune that was written by Carrie Hockett, and it's called Countdown. It is a substitution. It starts on the open D string, and it uses fourth finger, open D, third finger, on the same note. Open D, second finger, open D, first finger, and then we move back, fourth finger. So I'll just play the entire thing now and let you hear it from the start. Now we do the same thing on the A string.
3, 2, 1, 4. That's a great
Isn't that wonderful?
experience.
It is.
It brings about many,
Yes.
many things. Now, is that with the extension? Or
No
not?
extension is used.
There's no
there.
extension
No
in this
extension
one.
is
Very
used.
important we bring that about.
One of the things, Marvin, that I would point out, that as one teaches this, we have to be very conscious of the thumb, because it is so easy for a person to move the three fingers and the two and the
That's
one.
why this becomes important in terms
Yes.
of what you said of the thumb.
Because as you move the thumb only needs to move about this far, so that we get rigid.
Now, no tone on a string instrument is exactly what we all want to hear without the presence of vibrato. Would you please speak about that?
I think the teaching of vibrato is one of the most interesting kinds of experiences that children can have. And from the very start of the instrument almost, if you model for the child, they want to do vibrato. There are several ways to approach it. The way that I like to do is to start the vibrato for quite some period of time early in their experience, away from the instrument, and I use the right arm and bring the right arm up over the left shoulder. Bring the left arm then up to the arm and place the finger on the bone on that side.
The knuckle bone there.
That's right. And start with the second finger or the third finger. Either one is fine. Be sure that the thumb has some mobility and that the motion is a down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. Now, you will find that as you look at a person's hand, the hand is also moving, but the actual motion is precipitated from the elbow. So it is a forearm motion, and it is not a rotary motion. It simply goes down and up, and as it moves faster, you will tend to get a little bit of rotary kind of movement there, but it is not to be developed.
It's rotary in terms of the fact that there must always be circles rather than a stop and a go, a
Right.
return.
Yes, I think that would
That does the rotary, yes.
So that as this develops, so I always tell my children, you can watch television for 15 minutes and do this. And by the time you have finished, if you do this for an extended period of time, pretty soon when you put it on the instrument. So if I could put it on there, I'll show you then. Here again, it is best to start it in this middle part of the instrument. And so we can move it lightly over this, and often I will incorporate a harmonic.
That keeps the hand from getting tight.
It is better to have a wider vibrato with the young child than it is the very narrow tight.
Which is a nervous sound.
That is the nervous one. As we move then into the solid sound, again I prefer working in the third position, which puts our first finger on G, but the first finger and the fourth finger are the last two that should be developed.
You're doing it on the D string, the
D
G on
string.
the D string.
Because it is near the center of the neck. All of the fingers must be slightly above, and different people's hand will react different as we play. Second. Fourth. And so on.
Now, many of what you have been demonstrating, the teacher can help the students through manual assistance. The
Yes.
vibrato, the bow arm, the left hand position.
Yes.
I wonder if we could conclude this presentation with a demonstration of that.
All right. So as a teacher, I will want to show you what I would be doing to assist you in developing your student.
I'll try to be a good
All right.
student.
Many of these concepts which we've been doing and talking about during this short presentation, I would like to show you now how the teacher can incorporate that in manual assistance. And one of the first things that has to be done, of course, is the idea of how does one sit at the instrument. And we talked about that in the beginning. I'd simply like to emphasize that the teacher needs to get down in this area and then perhaps lift this, move it. Can you move slightly forward? That's good. And then from this angle, it is much easier to see how that...
Do I come to the instrument?
And you're coming to the instrument instead of
pulling the
the
instrument to
right.
me.
And
All right.
in that, if the person is back too far.
Yes.
Now, sometimes I'll have them move back, but what I'm looking for is the comfortableness of the placement of the knees and also of the feet. So we do want the feet on the floor. We don't want them uncomfortable. Now there is a good angle. Does that feel
Yes,
comfortable?
that's fine.
One of the things we have to constantly ask a child, are you comfortable? Because if they're not comfortable, then we need to do some adjusting. Okay? Let's talk a little bit about manual assistance with the right hand in the use of the bow. When we are using the right hand, the hand that will be drawing this bow needs to have the finger on top of the student's finger, and I like to use the thumb and first finger in lifting this.
Second finger.
I'm sorry, the thumb and the second finger in lifting this and dropping my elbow in order to avoid this elbow getting up too high, so that I'm touching that elbow to get the right length.
That feels good for me. You're not pressing too hard when you hold
No,
my hand.
this is very important, not to have a lot of tension and pressure.
Very good.
Okay?
All right.
There are a couple aspects that one can do to help the child with the left hand also. As you bring your arm up, I would simply find that this elbow can drop into the palm of my hand.
Oh, and just let the weight.
That's right, and that emphasizes the weight.
That's a good feeling,
Okay?
yes, the feeling of weight.
So I would
Instead of
also
pressing with
put
my
my
thumb.
second and my third fingers underneath the hand.
Can I do that without my thumb on the neck?
That's right, but I would just encourage a little bit of motion here.
Motion here,
Yes,
that's what I thought.
because sometimes it get too tight out to the side.
All right.
Okay, so this then would be that kind of
All
a.
right.
Okay, so those are the three things that I think could be very helpful. Let's talk a little bit about encouraging vibrato. In
Yep.
getting this left hand, I would take my hand and move that over the student's hand and get a motion into this.
Oh, I see. Holding my third finger in
Yes,
place
in
and
place.
moving it with your first and second.
Right. And
fingers.
that way, you see, I have already tried to get this feeling of weight.
Weight here.
Okay, and then moving
So the
this.
student can actually experience it with your
Exactly,
help.
exactly.
Know what it
Now,
feels like.
that would go over a long period of time, and just a little help from time to time, but I think also that the starting of it would be a little bit lower than back in this area.
Yes, because they can see it and feel it.
And that way then it can move. So if only the second finger is down, can you release the other fingers? Good.
So you do with only one finger down at a time.
Right.
All right.
Now, drop your thumb to behind the second finger.
All right.
Good.
And let it move.
That's good.
Very good.
And that gives an experience that one can work together on.
We've covered about 4 years of work in this short amount of time.
Yes, although not a lot of sounds were produced, these are the concepts that lead to good sound. And I think that, that we can never get rid of the use of oral concept all through these lessons, and for development of various kinds of techniques.
Thank you very much.